my last name being Alamo, like
Yeah, yeah.
every time I tell people that my last name's Alamo, they're like Alamo. And I'm like, no, like the building in San Antonio. I wouldn't say Mission because they don't know what Mission is, But I say no, the building in Texas, and they're like, they still look at me like, what? And then I go, oh, the car rental service. And they're like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's funny.
Fucking assholes.
That's classic.
Yeah.
So how's things going over there, man?
It's all right, man. I'm super lucky, dude. Just super lucky because, um, you know, I live in a good neighborhood, and finally, after fucking a bunch of shitty places, and it's pretty quiet out here, and the Nevada governor did a good job. We have the mayor of Las Vegas. She's the wife of the former mayor of Las Vegas.
Oh, okay.
And he's like a hotshot. He used to be the lawyer for all the mobsters here in Vegas, and then he became the
Oh
mayor.
shit.
And then she's the wife and now the mayor, and she wanted to keep the fucking casinos open. She's like, no, the casinos will close for a week or 2 weeks most, and then we'll be ready to go. And people are like, whoa, ladies, slow down.
Right, right. That's crazy. Yeah, here, like Greg Abbott, man, the governor here, like he's not really doing much. Um, here in the city of Houston, they're doing what they can. The problem with Texas is people don't listen, man. You got everybody running around here, no masks, no social distancing, no nothing. Like in my area anyway, we're on the northwest side of Houston. You go downtown and it's dead. It looks like from what I've seen in Vegas, it's the streets are dead. It's just desolate. But man, around here where I'm at, everybody's running around with it's an open carry state, so everybody feels like they need to walk around with a gun, all this shit. And I'm like, how's that gonna protect you from coronavirus, bro? Like, so now we got armed guards at the
Willie
freaking
Nelson was
grocery
on
store.
Real Time with Bill Maher on Friday. And he said,
Yeah,
he goes, you could tell. There's a saying you can always tell a Texan, but you can't tell him much, because it's just,
right,
you guys are just
exactly.
like, it's fucking Texas. Fuck, you guys are basically your own country.
Pretty much, man. I'm not originally from here. I'm from Jersey, so I'm old Cuban neighborhoods, Union City, stuff like that. So I wasn't really used to Texas when I first got here, but I've been here like 20 something years now. So yeah, I
What made you
still
go out
trip
there?
on people.
But I can hear your Texas accent. That's crazy, right?
Cause
How old were you when you went to Texas?
probably 17
Oh, okay. So
around
yeah, you're
there.
right on that cusp to get it,
Yeah.
right? Because I feel like, I moved to Vegas
Uh-huh.
when I was 30, 31, so I feel like I'm not gonna lose my Chicago accent. You know what I mean? I,
Right, right. Yeah. I lose my Jersey accent comes back from time to time, especially when I'm talking to people from up there.
yeah, 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 yeah.
But it comes back real quick, real quick. But yeah, around here it's weird. I have a concealed carry license, and sometimes I carry, but like here lately, I haven't felt the need to go out carrying a gun. You know what I'm saying? Like people are crazy around here. So we just trying to keep it together, I guess. And like you, I'm in a decent neighborhood. It's
Right, right.
quiet. For the most part, not too much trouble or anything like that. But it's just it's crazy, man.
Yeah, I've been reading Camus, and then from what I can tell in
I
the Cameron too, like there's always even back in the plague in the 1300s, there was always two quarantines. There was the people who were in the crowded neighborhoods and had to mix, and there was death everywhere. And then those people who lived out, like my grandma would say, retirado. They live
right,
out in the fucking burbs or in the countryside, and they don't really see the in the Decameron, they're fucking drinking for 10 days and partying, and it's and there's
right,
people dying, left and right in the city. And you kind of feel guilty about that, right? Camus talks about
right,
that too, like where you're not having it as, that's the one thing you say, right? You see the news and stuff like that, and however your life has changed, but then you're like, it could be worse because things are
yeah,
worse, and then you feel
yeah,
bad also that it's not as bad. You feel that guilt of like that privilege of not having this thing affect you as much as it can. But that it is what it is. You could you just have to feel. I guess for me, I feel glad that I just feel guilty, you know, because there's people who are fucking oblivious who are like, thank God I live in the
Right.
whatever, you know.
Right. Right. Yeah. Like my wife's family. My wife's from East Texas, and her family. That a lot of them are like that, and I guess for them they can be like that because they're miles apart from each other. Everybody's got acreage out there. There's some distance, and even here where I'm at, it's a decent neighborhood and stuff. But these houses are pretty crammed in, and with all of us stuck here, everybody's out in the street. And
Isn't it funny
high,
how the quarantine made everybody like? I've been seeing
right,
neighbors. Everybody's out. It's like the fucking Partridge Family around here. You know, people are
right,
like skipping rope down the street and shit. I'm like, where did all these kids come from?
dude. Yeah, around here you never saw kids. I didn't even know there was this
Right.
many kids. And there
I
must.
thought I lived in a fucking retirement community.
Yeah, I started feeling that way too around here. It's crazy. It's really crazy. But yeah, it's before coronavirus, everybody's staring at their phones. Now that there's coronavirus, everybody wants to go outside. And
The
it's
grass is always greener, man. The grass is always
yeah, I'm
fucking
telling
greener, dude. I see your hat, man. I'm
you.
drinking. Look at my mug. I'm drinking out of.
Nice, nice.
So, but
Yeah,
you're. I mean,
my,
I
go
mean,
ahead.
in some circles, you're known as Arturo the Cuban. So, are you like half and
Yeah.
half, or?
No, no, no. I mean, my parents are Cuban. I'm first generation Cuban American. My brothers are too. Uh, but no, the Arturo the Cuban came up because I'm a musician. I was,
Right. I saw that you were in a couple bands, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I did I was in the
Starting in the
hardcore
'80s,
scene.
right?
Yeah, well, in the more like in the '90s.
Mm.
But yeah, I got into the hardcore scene in the
And that was back in
'80s
the
when I
East
was living.
Coast, or no?
Yeah, yeah, in Jersey, and then I spent a lot of time Lower East Side Manhattan. CBGB's, Club A7, things like that. The old hardcore scene, like out before Soho was,
I was gonna say
I had
that's you were
dollar.
there right when it was dying, right when New York was dying, and it became a fucking
Uh,
suburb.
right. It was. I mean, New York back then was, coming out of skirting bankruptcy. So
Right.
there was a lot of issues. Police brutality was a problem back then, and I mean, it still is, obviously, but yeah, man, back then it was kind of crazy. You used to be able to get away with a lot of shit because cops
Yeah.
didn't want to have to do the paperwork. For example, like drinking in the park and stuff. I was like 14, 15 years old. Hanging out Washington Square Park, drinking, smoking weed, whatever. Cops didn't give a shit. They just like kept walking. And
I feel
it was
like
just too much paperwork by the
everything's
time.
safer. Everything's safer now and stuff like that. But like, it's because I think and they show this. There's less crime now. There's some people are more law abiding, and so things like that don't happen anymore, right? Where people are just chilling in the park drinking. And I mean, I guess that's a good thing, right? But it was fun at the
Right.
time, right?
Yeah, I mean, at the time, you could get away with drinking in public, and now, like, shit, living here in Texas, I mean, you got an open container in your car. Yeah, they're gonna get you for
That's
that. You
hilarious. You
can't
can walk
be
around with a fucking rifle in Texas, but you can't walk
yeah,
around with a
right,
fucking 40.
right. Like if you have a 6 pack missing a beer or two out of it, that's considered an open container. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Oh, I would
So,
have been. Oh man, that's
so
terrible,
yeah,
dude.
I mean, yeah, that's one of those government overreach things, where they're just like
Well, what
inventing
happened?
laws just to
Yeah.
invent laws.
No, they invent laws because the more laws people break, the more they can fucking charge people. Like,
Oh
20,
yeah, yeah,
40, 100, $200. It's a racket, dude.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and then here in Nevada, when we passed that legal marijuana recreational in 2016,
Hmm.
and so it wasn't that bad. Like in Nevada, in 2016, obviously Trump won, but here in Nevada, I just moved to Nevada, and Nevada had elected the first Latina senator. Uh,
Hmm.
the governor went from Republican to Democrat. Both our senators
Right.
are Democrats, and then we passed legal marijuana. So everybody was like freaking out with Trump, and I was like, well, I'm like in this little paradise, and it's fucking Vegas, and weed is legal. So I'm like, I don't know what. Maybe I don't know why I'm so not so stressed out over here, but
Yeah, right.
so they did it's legal in Nevada. You can have up to an ounce on you, and but you can't smoke in public. You can only smoke on private property, and
Okay.
so you can't be walking outside. But I mean, since you can drink on the strip, right? Because the strip is actually private
Hmm.
property. It's even though you're outside, you're actually on like casino property, and
Oh,
that's why you
right,
can
right.
drink outside. And so people, I mean, at first you would see, me and my wife would smoke. You have to smoke in fucking hot box it in parking garages before we went anywhere.
Right.
But now you can really walk outside, and you might get a few heads turned, when they smell what you're smoking. But everybody's, I mean, you walk down the strip, maybe not now because there's nobody on the strip now. It's fucking
Right, right.
crazy, dude. But yeah, if you walk down the strip when it's pre-quarantine, let's say, people were smoking left and right, and it's pretty crazy. And
Mm.
it calms people down. Like when you see somebody drinking, you're like, okay, I need to keep an eye on that motherfucker because if he has another drink, it's shit's about to pop off, right? But if you
Yep,
see somebody
yep.
fucking smoking joint after joint, you're not like, oh, that motherfucker's a threat. I need to watch out. That
Yeah.
nigga's about to pass out and have a nice long sleep, right?
Yeah,
You know
that's
what I
why
mean?
ain't about to do anything.
So I mean, you were a musician, man. It's one of the themes in the show. People who have listened that I love music. I love music, and I never learned to play an instrument. So what you play, man?
I play guitar and bass, and did some vocals, mostly backup stuff. But after being in a band and stuff and touring for like
Well, how'd you
10
get how'd
years,
you how'd you get into music? I mean, for me, I didn't get into music because like there was never that nobody around me was doing music, so it was like
I
where was I gonna start doing that? I would have to
yeah, I mean,
have my friends.
yeah, I was around quite a few musicians. One of my uncles
That's
was in
nice,
a
man.
band in the '70s called Spyro Gyra. They weren't very big, but they had a decent like cult following.
Hmm.
Um, And I grew up obviously, if you're Latino, every Saturday you're cleaning the house listening to old Cuban music or whatever in my house,
Yeah.
so we grew up with a lot of musical influence. And for me it stuck. With my brothers it really didn't. By the time I came to Texas, I was playing some guitar and stuff, and growing up there being in Jersey and in New York and the hardcore scene, I was around a lot of musicians and stuff. Agnostic Front and things like that. And I was friends with the lead singer from there, Roger, because he's Cuban too, and he's from Jersey. And he's the one who got me into the hardcore scene, dragged me out to New York, showed me what everything was like over there, and I was like, man, I fell in love, and I was spent a lot of my like teenage years were spent in New York, and I just loved it, man. It was the cool culture, and it was really accepting. Um, I was
Just a mix.
it was
Like anybody,
a
whatever you got,
right,
yeah, you know what I mean? Whatever you have to bring to it, bring it,
right. There was a lot. It was crazy because being in that part of New York, there was a lot of skinheads and shit in that area, and then there was a lot of Puerto Ricans moving in to Alphabet City in that time. There was a lot of abandoned buildings, old factories, and things like that, and I remember there was a lot of Puerto Ricans that moved there and basically took over these buildings, and slowly but surely we're like cleaning them up, remodeling them, having other people move in, and like of course, this was when New York City was really bad, and I remember the Latino community in New York was struggling, not
And that's what Latino
it
immigrants
was
do,
huge.
right? I mean, I'm from Chicago, so it's almost the same story. Like, they give Puerto Ricans the shitty neighborhoods. Puerto Ricans move there,
Right,
fix it up, and then 20, 30 years later, the rich white people who move to the suburbs, like, oh, that's a nice city. It's trendy. That's where all the good restaurants are. Oh, it's so
hmm
pretty here. Let's buy a condo. Let's tear this house down and build condos, and
right,
then it fucking starts. And then Puerto Ricans then Puerto Ricans moved to Humboldt Park, same shit. It was fucking fired
right,
out. And then we fucking fixed
right,
that too, and now they want to move there. So it's
right.
like it's crazy, man.
Yeah. It happened to us like when I was real young, man. Like I remember, like 5 or 6 years old. My mom, she's a single mom at the time, and shit. She bought a house over there, 2-story house with a basement. She got it from this older lady for like 50 grand, and a lot of our childhood was there in Union City, and Union City was run down. It was old Italian neighborhood, and it was in the shit when we lived there. And now that same house, man, I still got friends up there that I talked to. They were saying it sold for like damn near $1 million. I was like,
Yeah.
holy shit.
My
That
grandma
house
bought
was
her
like,
house. My grandma bought her. She came from Honduras. She bought her house for 26,000 in Logan Square, and now it's you look it up and it's right
right.
next to where they're trying to gentrify. It's worth $500,000, and
Mm-hmm.
and people keep mailing her saying, "Hey, we'll pay for your moving costs. We'll pay for your closing costs. We'll pay for everything. Just can you get out
Mm-hmm.
so we can buy your house and build a condo?" And she's like, she's stubborn. She's 70. She's about to be 80. Where's she gonna go? She
Right.
doesn't want to go to a nursing home. She doesn't want to go to the suburbs. She hates the suburbs. She likes her life. And she's like, "Fuck it."
Right. Right.
I was here when nobody wanted it, and so I'm gonna fucking stay. Now, now that you guys want it has nothing to do with me. Just leave me the fuck
Right.
alone.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And it's just weird like that, man. I mean, there was so much of that, like in Alphabet City, there was so many of us that lived in old abandoned, uh, like old factory floor, for example. Man, this thing felt like it was miles long. There wasn't any wall, it was wide open, and
So I mean,
it was
there's
a
people living in a factory like you're because we have that in Chicago too, like these big ass abandoned like factories from like the
right,
early part of the century, right? And they're just
yeah,
old. So there's people just living on a floor, and it's just as far as you can
yeah,
see, the big ass factory.
yeah.
That's
Most
crazy,
of them were
man.
a bunch of teenagers, people in the oldest people there were probably early 20s. A lot of them were,
And all kinds of shit, right? People fucking, people doing
right,
drugs, people whatever the fuck, whatever you
man.
can do, whatever you can do,
Yeah,
whatever you can
there
do in the
was.
dark.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Like if you ever see that movie Kids, that was done in New York, a lot of that was a lot of that culture in that movie was part of that.
Shit, you know
And
what I haven't even seen? I haven't even seen Warriors, man. I've been meaning to see that.
really,
Yeah, I
yeah, you
haven't
gotta
seen it
see
because
that.
I've been seeing references and I know that what it's based on and shit like that, but I gotta see it.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of a campy take on gang culture in New York before drive-bys and shit like that. Back when gangs were swinging chains and beating each other with sticks and rumbles and things like that. So I mean, that's kind of the
Supposedly it's
gang
based
culture I
on.
came from.
It's supposedly that movie's based on a play, an ancient Greek play by Xenophon, who was like a
Right.
student of Socrates, and he wrote that.
Mhm.
It's called and what is it? I don't know what it's called, but it's all those soldiers are coming back from the Persian War, and they have to fucking go through all this shit to get back to where they want to go, and
Oh
that's what the
yeah,
Warriors
yeah,
is about,
yeah,
right? They're trying to go from one end of the city to the other. See, I haven't even seen
yeah,
it,
yeah.
but
I've heard that.
it's
Right,
crazy,
I've
man.
heard that, and I mean, I can make that connection because it's kind of like that. Like the Warriors themselves are just trying to get back to their little hood, and they got to go through all this other shit, and yeah, it's crazy, but it's
Did you ever
fairly
go towards that
accurate.
gang life? Because I mean, I even in the suburbs, I did. It was there was a period where like you can go that route, and it's usually in middle
Yeah,
school, right?
yeah,
It's usually like in middle school.
right. Yeah, and like in Union City and stuff, and parts of New
Right,
York, being
right.
being Latino, before I had a stroke, I had a much different color complexion. I'm a lot paler now than I used
Oh,
to be,
really?
but yeah, yeah, yeah. I had a stroke when I was like 40, so about 5, 6 years
And
ago.
what was it? I mean,
Uh,
I'm afraid of having a stroke too, because my grandpa had like five of them, But I hear that
Holy
they're not
shit!
genetic, right? It's not genetic, I don't think.
No, no, it's not.
But how
You
do
know
you get it?
the
Like high blood pressure and stuff like that? Because I have that too.
Yeah, yeah. I got really bad high blood pressure. Like for me, um, it's weird because I after being I was doing music in the studio and stuff, but I also was running my own business. And it was a landscape construction firm, and man, I spent a lot of time out in the heat, like 14 hours a
Mm,
day, just humping it. And I had a friend of mine who's a neurologist, and he kept telling me, take it easy, this, that, and the other. I never listened to him, and then finally, when I had a stroke, he's like, I told you, you pushed it too hard, and so for me, the stroke is weird. I've always had a history of seizures, like mild seizures and stuff. So I had underlying issues
mm.
to begin with. So I don't have the typical like artery issues that are attributed to stroke, where a lot of times a stroke is caused by a lack of blood supply
It's like a blockage in
to
an
the
artery to
brain.
the brain, right? the
Right,
part of the brain
right,
doesn't get blood, oxygen.
right, right. And for me, it was they still haven't given me a definitive answer as to what caused it, but
Damn, which is even more
I know
fucked up,
that
right? Because you're like, okay, what
right,
was that?
right. So I take a ton of medication every day to keep me going, but yeah, ever since that one stroke, and then I spent like 12 days in the hospital.
How did it come on? I
Um,
mean, my grandma had a
man,
stroke. She said she saw stars first.
yeah, yeah. So like for me, what was happening was for like the 2 weeks prior that it happened, I kept passing out while I was at work, and I kept thinking heat exhaustion, mild heat stroke, something like that.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I
yeah.
never went and had it looked. And I never went and had it looked at. And I did that for about 3 weeks. And then one day, my wife found me just laid out on the floor, unresponsive,
Holy
and I
shit.
wake up in the hospital. Yeah, I woke up in the hospital and like I couldn't feel anything on my left side. Like I was dumbfounded. I didn't know what it was. And because of my age, I was only 40.
You're not even
Doctors
thinking stroke,
immediately,
right? You're thinking, what the fuck?
right? Man, I'm trying to figure out what happened. Doctors trying to figure out what happened, and in the ER, the first doctor sees me. I'm sure saw my name and automatically started asking me about drugs and this and that. And I'm like, bro, I'm clean. Blood test pissed me right now. I don't care. I'm clean. And so like for 3 days, the nurses and everybody just treated me like I fucking had some kind of an overdose or something. But all my blood work was clean and stuff, and then they started taking it seriously. And even at the hospital, I struggled for a while. And I'm honestly, man, considering what I went through, I'm honestly glad I'm even here. But that shit, at 40 years old, I was done. I couldn't work anymore. I
I
couldn't
was going to
do
ask you, man, how did
anything.
it change, how did it change your perspective on life, man? And where you were
Man,
at, who you were.
it broke me down because after being in the band and touring and stuff, I was a studio musician, which is where Arturo the Cuban came from. And I did a lot of studio work with rappers, a lot of local rappers here in Houston. Some of them are big names now and stuff like that. And I couldn't do that. I didn't have the finger movement in my left hand anymore, which is the hand that I fret with on my guitar. So I had to relearn all that. I had to relearn how to hold a pencil. Like when I type now, I used to be able to type pretty fast, but my left hand, I can only use one finger. I don't have the independent
How long
movement.
did it take you to get back to, functioning?
Shit. Close to 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah, close to 3 years, man. I mean, we lost everything because of it. We had savings and everything like that, but when you don't have any income to help supplement that and you're not churning money, that
Right.
savings goes fast. That savings goes fast. And within 6 months, we had our SUV repoed. 3, 4 months after that, we lost our house. Like, I mean, we've been through it. We've been through it. And the only vehicle I own now is the truck I bought and paid for from running my business, the one they can't take. So, so yeah, we lost all our shit, man. And I've been lucky that even though my mom's a single mom, she struggled her ass off her whole life, but
Same. I got a single mom,
she's
too. Shout out to single moms,
yeah, and
man.
she yeah, I heard that. Shout out to single moms everywhere,
They're
especially
like
now.
fucking, they're the glue, man. They're the glue of a whole
Oh,
under society, man. Black, brown,
yeah, I'm not
Asian
right,
kids, who
but
knows, right?
my mom saved me and my kids and shit from being on the street. She runs a business over here in Texas, a wedding reception hall. She sells wedding dresses and stuff, and she's doing really well. And props to her because she raised us in some pretty shitty conditions for a long time,
How
and
many
I
siblings
think
you
we
got,
all
bro?
turned out. I have two. She raised myself and both my brothers, and my older brothers, an EMT. My younger brother served in Iraq, stuff like that. They both run their
My
own
brother was in
businesses
Iraq,
now.
too. Marines, MP.
Yeah,
My mom's
yeah,
Navy.
Marines too.
My dad's Army. I went to college. which I
Yeah,
always tell
yeah,
them it
yeah,
was my
yeah.
own kind of war.
Right, right. I did the college thing too, and instead of enlisting and stuff. Both my brothers enlisted.
Do you ever
I,
like
I,
think
I
back and like think maybe I should have done that? Because now I'm thinking like it would have been I don't know. I don't, you know, I didn't really do much with my 20s, man, you know, and so I always wondered, like, okay, if I would, my brother went to the Marines and he tried to get me to take the test, right? Just to see, he's like, he's trying to recruit me,
Mm-hmm.
right? He's like, I just want to see if you score high.
Right, right,
Don't smoke on my ass. Like, you're going to score
right.
really high. You're going to score really high, you know? And if you get a bachelor's degree, you can just go into officer training school and, you know, telling me
Right.
all this shit, right? My own brother trying to fucking
Yeah,
send me
yeah,
to
yeah.
war. And he's my younger brother, too. I'm the oldest. And so, yeah, I always wonder, like, you know, what would happen if I had gone to the Marines, you know?
Yeah, I don't, you know, I often wonder that too, but I don't know, man. I was a little, I was too much of a troublemaker, and I guess, and then, you know, I had a friend from school who was a bit older than me, but right out of high school, he joined the service, and he was killed in that barracks explosion. Was it in Lebanon? I think it was. Where they killed like so many Marines. Man, I can barely remember that. It was so long ago. But that right there turned me off to war and military and all that. I felt like you're selling your soul, you know, for
Yeah, it was
something
tough.
that
My brother enlisted in 2007 at the end of 2007, and he didn't tell anybody. He just enlisted and then told us that he had signed the papers. And so 2007, I mean, I was in college and I was radicalized, right? So I knew what that the war was a lie and what it was for oil and all this shit and all these people were. And so when my brother says, you know, I enlisted, I'm probably going to be deployed to, you know, he's a Marine, so they're the tip of the spear supposedly, and they're gonna, or they
right,
are, so they, you know, they get sent wherever there's a fucking war. So I'm thinking, oh, here he's going. It's August 2007. He's going to this fucking war that's pointless. But I can't tell him that, right? He doesn't want to hear that. Hey, you're going to some
right.
pointless war. So I'm just, you know, I remember those conversations before he left, and when he came back from boot, where, you know, I'm thinking like, you know, you're going to this stupid fucking war, and you know, why did you enlist? And why are you doing this? But I didn't tell him any of that stuff. You know, just told him to stay safe, man, and you know, it's weird. Like when you hear about like. The atrocities of what that soldiers commit. You know, they accidentally killed some civilian, blah blah blah. But then when your
Right.
brother or somebody like that is going over there, you almost want to tell him, "Hey, shoot first, ask questions later," because you just want
Yeah,
him to come home. You know, so you're fighting these
right.
two urges, right? You know that that's wrong, right? You know that that's the problem, that people go there and they're scared and they shoot everybody. But then when it's your brother, you're like, "Hey, just come home, man. Do whatever you got to do to come home." You know.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly it. Like I like you said, you know, I was radicalized too at a young age, and, you know, against war and things like that. But when my brother went, man, I had cable news on 24/7, just hoping to catch a glimpse of him, to know
My
he's
mom did that. My
okay.
mom did that.
Dude, that was so traumatizing. And I already have my own mental health issues, you know, because when we were running our own business, my wife and I, we went to Louisiana after Katrina, and we did a lot of communications infrastructure work over there, climbing telephone poles and things like that. And man, we had a crew of like 45 dudes, and we were there for 13 months. And Jesus Christ, man, after 6 months, there's still bodies in the streets in like the lower Ninth Ward, and you were just like, what the fuck, you know? And you don't realize it till after it's all over. A year later, you're still having freaking nightmares, you know, and you're just like, I didn't know what to call it. You know, it wasn't until my brother came back from Iraq that I knew what it was, PTSD. You know, it was just like, holy shit, you know. And it wasn't until he started getting care for it, and he started telling me I need to get it taken care of. So I started seeing therapists and, you know, psychiatrists and all that stuff, and it helped. Um, but yeah, after having the stroke, all my mental health issues just were amplified. So like anxiety's way worse than it should be. You know, like doing this right here. This is the first time I've ever done something like this, and I've always had worries and issues about it. Like I'm gonna look like a dumbass, or I'm gonna say something stupid, and I'm just
Dude, I hate
like,
the way I look. I hate the way I sound. You know, my wife's
right,
always like, "No, you sounded great, or you did great." I'm like, "No, that fucking sucked. I see every error. I see everything that I'm not. Right? This is what I want to
yeah,
be, and then this is what I am,
right.
and this fucking gap bothers the shit out of me."
Yeah, I feel you. I feel you. I feel that way with my writing too, and I guess that's what they call imposter syndrome. Um,
Yeah,
and I've been,
yeah. Talk about that. I mean, so how'd you become a writer? You're in a band, right? And then you start writing. How did you start writing? Yeah, I'm assuming you were always writing in some way.
right. Yeah. I was always writing. If it wasn't, like lyrical stuff or poetic type of stuff, I always wrote,
Right.
journaled, and it helps with coping with a lot of things,
I was gonna say
especially.
PTSD. I mean, and you're talking about the war, but even the way we were raised, you read now like kids
Yeah.
that are raised in rough fucking times and starvation times. There's days where I didn't eat, or there was days where I didn't go
Mm.
home. I didn't change my clothes, and I'm an eighth grader. I should be home. Or we moved every
Right.
fucking other year. That causes stress in a
Yeah.
child, and their brain doesn't develop in a way. It stunts their development of their brain, and you carry that into your adulthood, right? You can't shake that.
You absolutely do, and I think that for like us, hypertension, high blood pressure, I think there's underlying issues that attribute to that hypertension and the high blood pressure in poorer and more marginalized communities. Like when you see how coronavirus is impacting Black folks and Latinos more than anybody else, and I think that's you have to attribute some of that to the hypertension and the blood pressure and the mental health issues and all of that wears on your body. Depression can cause you pain. Depression can cause your body to do all kinds of things. And I think that aside from, the biases in our healthcare system, which there are many, because I experienced a lot of that, but it's even worse for black folks, because I can walk into a hospital and they think I'm white until they ask me my name. So I have that privilege that comes with just looking like I'm kind of white.
Yeah,
Um,
I feel like my rights change throughout the year. Like in the winter, and when I'm coming out of the winter, I'm paler. But
right,
come see me in a couple months when the summer hits. I'm gonna be dark, and so people treat me
yeah,
differently throughout the year.
right, and
And
a
about
lot of the
about
times, no,
go ahead.
I was gonna say a lot of times, it also comes from my experience is once they find out your name,
Ooh, yep.
with cops, even nurses and doctors and things, those biases, implicit biases like
Well,
that,
you know that sending a
really do have
resume,
an
right?
impact.
When you send your resume and it has at the top
Yeah,
of the resume Hector Luis Alamo. The fucking chances of that
right,
motherfucker being given a fair
right,
chance.
right, right. So yeah, I mean, I had an issue like that with an agent. I had a friend of mine who's a musician, and he had an agent, and he was trying to hook me up because his agent supposedly had connections in the literary world, whatever. And my first meeting with the guy, he was telling me I needed a more appealing name, this, that, and the other, and my right, and I was like, man, fuck you. First of all, fuck you. But he started asking me for different surnames that are, known throughout my family. And my stepdad, he's Jamaican, right? His last name's Henry. So I told him about that. He's like, oh, you should write under Arthur Henry. I'm like, man, how the
Wow.
hell am I supposed to talk about my culture? How am I
Right.
still supposed to talk about all the injustices and things that I've experienced in my life with a white ass name like that? Like, come on, man. Like, Arthur Henry? Are you tripping?
But that's the oldest
So,
bargain in the world, right? Like you could be
hey,
successful, but you got to give up your identity. You got to not care
yeah,
who the fuck whatever's inside here. Nobody gives a fuck. If you want to be successful,
right,
change everything about you. Like, and that's I'm an atheist, but the Bible's there's so much truth in it. What is it?
yeah.
What does it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his soul? That, and you see that in
Right.
everyday life, man. You see that in that situation, right? Hey, I'll make you a famous writer, but you gotta, what was the name? Arthur Henry.
Arthur Henry.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
I mean,
So,
would you imagine seeing your dad name everywhere, and they're talking about you, right? But you see that pen name
yeah,
everywhere. You wouldn't even feel pride. You'd be like, "That's not my name."
right. Right. That's not me. So I just, man, it really, it was a punch in the gut. I mean, it was just like, I was beside myself. And I didn't think, I don't know, I thought that your value as a writer was about your content, your talent, your
Your
skill, you know?
uniqueness,
Right,
your
right. Like,
individuality, the thing that makes your writing different than anybody else's.
right. And I never thought the name would be such a problem. And it was. And I never talked to that dude again. And I don't, I'm not about dragging people through the mud and shit like that.
Right.
Yeah, I told my buddy about it, and I was like, dude, your agent's a prick, dude. So, um, he's still with him, and he does good work with him and stuff like that. I look at that guy completely differently now.
Yeah.
It's like, man, yeah, like you just threw out your implicit bias and just slapped me in the face with it, and I was like, I can't do it, and you know, it's like that whole thing with that damn book, man, American Dirt.
Yeah. I mean,
It's the
what's your take
same
on that? I
thing.
mean, okay, I get
I
that
don't.
I'm not down for this whole, if you're not that, you can't write about that.
No, I'm not either. No,
Because there's
I
there's
think
plenty of people who weren't that, whatever that is, whatever it was,
right,
right? And they wrote about it well. They wrote about it better than anybody, right?
right,
You know?
right, right. And I think honestly, if it wasn't billed as this great
Right.
telling story that if it wasn't billed that way, there wouldn't have been any hype.
Right.
And it's just another white lady appropriating some story. It's common. You can do it, whatever. If a white lady wants to write about Cuban culture, whatever, go ahead. It might not be accurate, but
Al Pacino
right
played
to
Tony
do so.
Montana.
Dude, shit drives me
Right?
nuts. It drives me
And in
nuts to
everybody's
this
mind,
day.
that's the Cuban accent. In everybody's mind.
Oh,
They
it's
all, they
such an
all talk
over.
like Tony Montana. They think that's fucking.
Yeah, his character was so overblown, and it
Right.
was. I mean, it drives me nuts. Great movie, but
Yeah.
I don't know why they couldn't put an Andy Garcia in there or something like that. An actual Cuban who could have probably done the role more justice.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
I mean, and that's speaking to what you're talking about with American Dirt, right? That's what the critics are saying, right? They should have given that assignment. Why doesn't somebody who is closer to the content given
mhm,
that a similar assignment, and they could have done it like you said, more justice, but for the book.
right.
And it's all
Yeah,
it's just
and
about opportunities, right? That's what everybody's mad about, right? This
right,
white lady has an opportunity to have this book about
seven figure
migrants,
deal.
and yeah, and so Latinos are thinking like, you know dude, like, why there was some guy on what's his name, he's an old impersonator from like the 50s and 60s, he's still here in Vegas. Fuck, I can't think of his name, but he's a famous, like, he does celebrity impersonations, and he does a Ronald Reagan, right? And so when they went to go do the Ronald Reagan movie, and he has a famous Ronald Reagan, right? He's done it in front of Ronald Reagan, like for his birthday and shit. And people know the fucking guy's name, they're probably shouting it out. But
Bro.
like, so when the Ronald Reagan movie comes, right? He's thinking, I'm gonna fucking get it, right? And
Hmm.
something little, Rich Little.
Oh yeah, yeah,
You know what I
yeah,
mean? You know that fucker, right? So he does a great
yeah,
Ronald
yeah.
Reagan. The
Rich
movie
Little.
comes and he doesn't get the part. It goes to somebody else. And so he's on this show. He's on the Norm Macdonald live show, and you could see in his eyes. It's 20 years later, but you can see he's like, I should have got that part. That was my part. That part was made for me. That was a part of a lifetime, and they gave it to somebody else. You know, and it's but yeah, it's the same thing. Like, why are you giving different? It's almost like they give it to random people. They don't. They.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know what I'm trying to say, but
Yeah.
it's frustrating.
I know what you're saying. I get what you're saying. Instead of giving it to somebody who's more, who would do the role more justice, they're
Yeah,
just
there's
going to
like,
give it to
and
whoever.
Jerry Seinfeld argues about that. Like, artistic, the artistic production in this country is being controlled by businessmen and businesswomen. Like,
Hmm.
and they don't know what's good art. They're just going by metrics. But that's not going to lead to the best product. That's not going to lead to the best shows. That's not going to lead to the best movies. That's not going to lead to the best music. If you're just going on
Right.
like business.
No, yeah, and I totally agree with that. And I'm trying to think of another like example of that
Oh,
because it
they're everywhere.
seems
You
there's
can't think
so
of them because
many.
they're everywhere. They're everywhere. You think like, oh, why did that role go to that person? Like, they're just
Hmm.
they're just part of the privileged elite. But what I was going to ask you is like, have you you were talking to that agent who wanted to change your name. I mean, has there been talk about people trying to change the content of the actual content of your writing?
I don't know that it didn't really come to that point with him. I pitched him the first three chapters of a book I'm working on, focused on Latin American history and stuff like that. And I'm pitching it from a Latino perspective because you look at all the history books regarding Latin American history, and most of them are written by white men.
Mm-hmm.
I think one or two maybe by a white woman. And when you read them, the perspective comes from the American perspective. So everything about the Latin, whether it was Panama or El Salvador or whatever, everything about that country was bad in the Latin American history books, and they never focus on the U.S. interventionism, the manifest destiny, all that mess, and so I figured, I'm going to take and I'm going to bring it to the table from a Latino perspective, from an colonialist, anti-imperialist perspective, and he seemed to like that, the content of the book, but the minute he says change your name to Arthur Henry, how am I going to provide that perspective?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it felt very out of place. So how can I would have to change the content of the book
And why? I mean, I have my
almost.
own answer, but like, why do you feel that desire, that purpose to like talk about what's happening in Latin America and talk about Latin American history and talk about that history of the United States intervention in Latin America? Why do you have that desire to talk about all that in your writing?
Well,
Like, why do you care about that?
because yeah, no, man, most Americans just don't get it. Venezuela, a few, not this recent actions against Venezuela, but when John Bolton was still around, and
Man, he wanted to
the
invade.
propaganda,
He wanted to invade
dude,
Venezuela so
yeah,
bad.
and like the media, the Associated Press, particularly, man, they drive that propaganda machine as far as like the narrative, making everything seem like it's so bad and so evil and it's socialist this and and none of it adds up. But Americans as a whole, like 9/11, they're going to run out and put their American flags outside, not realizing they're being a bunch of fucking nationalists. And when it comes to Latin America, it's the same thing. People see what's in the news or they read it on the internet and they're like, "Fuck yeah, invade that country." The reality is that some of
That's exactly what they were. Fuck yeah, invade
right,
that country. Fuck yeah, they
right,
get a fucking big ass hard on, dude. They're like, oh
right,
man, I
and
can't
it's
wait till we
like,
fucking bomb that fucking country. Oh, it's gonna be fucking so good.
yeah, right, and it's like to me, in my perspective, I see the lithium reserves in Latin America, and I'm like, that's what they're after. You know, Iraq, all that was about oil, but moving forward, it's about lithium because when John Bolton was still in office and they were talking about invading Venezuela, if you pay attention, and I'm sure you could look back on this, Tesla stocks started to rise. The um, what was his name? Man, the coup in was it Bolivia?
And
No,
at Morales,
yeah, Morales. 'Cause they have one of the biggest lithium reserves in the world, and as soon as he was out, Tesla stocks went through the roof, and it's like because everything Tesla relies on that lithium.
right?
So I feel like that's the motivating factor. It's always a hidden agenda about
Well, the news is
resources
like,
or
especially now, especially with the corporate takeover of the news. The news is just like a very it's a telenovela, right? And
Right.
so, but they're trying to control it. They're trying to control where the narrative goes. So like a war is good. That's good for a few episodes, a few weeks, a few months. And they need characters, so they need a bad guy. Fucking Maduro's he's bad, right? But he's not as bad as it's better him than the fucking opposition that wants to go in there and just fucking open Venezuela's legs up to the world, and then same thing with Morales, he clung on to power, but look at who's in there now. But the other thing is that the reason I feel like I have to talk about Latin American politics and that history, especially that history, not just Latin American politics in isolation, but how United States policy towards Latin America has shaped the history of Latin America. And because I think that a lot of Latinos don't know that, especially working class Latinos, which a lot of Latinos are. And I feel like that's crazy to me because you're in a country, America, you're born here. I was born here.
Mm-hmm.
And but then you're like, well, how did I at least I did. I was like, well, how did I get here? How did my family get here? Why did they come here? What's wrong with the place they come from? What happened to it? See, those are just questions that lead to another question. Then you see, then you understand yourself, right? If you can't, you can't know yourself without knowing where you come from and how you came from that place.
Right.
And most people don't ask that.
No, I totally agree with that too. Because, growing up, Cuban family, I always wondered why my non-English speaking, Cuban family was here in the U.S., and I'm like, why did they leave Cuba? So I always had all these questions. And, when Castro first took over, my mom, she was like, I don't know, she became part of the literacy program in Cuba when she was 16.
Oh yeah,
and
they sent all these young people out into the countryside, man. That's beautiful, right?
Yeah, they did.
That was the beautiful time at the very beginning of the revolution.
Yeah, and my mom loved it. And but it wasn't, when my mom left Cuba when all the blockade and, the sanctions and all that stuff really started to hurt the country.
Yeah, imagine if the United States had rushed to help Cuba. You guys are trying to take care of your people. Let's help you. Let's give you grants. Let's give you loans, favorable loans. But they didn't do that. Blockade. Let's starve them. That's what the memo said in the Kennedy administration. Starve them into submission.
Right. And they were, when my mom said when she came here, that's basically what it was. Everybody was starving. And that's, most of my family came for that same reason. And I still have a lot of family there. I have cousins that just got here last year, a couple years ago, things like that. So they're still trying to come here.
And then people see how people deflect though. They'll say he made it in the 60s. It was illegal to be gay in Cuba, blah, blah, blah. And then you think it was illegal to sodomy was illegal till a few years ago in the United States.
Yeah. They were throwing people in prison for that shit. I mean, come on. It was
in Britain. It was a crime for sure in the 60s.
Yeah. And that was the standard around the world back then. So, if Barack Obama can evolve on gay marriage, then
in 2011, 2012.
Right. Why can't Castro evolve on gay marriage too? And he did.
He did.
So, there's evolution is not just what you see in the physical world. It's of the mind and the body and of the soul too.
Well, that's what's happening with this cancel culture. It refuses to accept that people change over their lives, right? Okay, I'm 35, so a lot of my early adolescence is all on the fucking internet, right? And so I'm ready for people to call me out on what I said in 2011, 2010, 2007. There's shit from 2007. Call me out, dude, I'm not that fucking person anymore, right? If you're the same person you were from 10 years ago, you need to fucking get your life together, right? You shouldn't be the same person you were from 5 years ago. Grow, motherfucker, grow, right? Change, learn, grow. So somebody's gonna call me out, and I'll be like, that's not me anymore.
Right. I have a few readers that were, they started reading my work when they were 16, 17 years old, and there's some commentary that's out there that they put out there, and it's very anti-gay or very transphobic or something like that, and they're still around. They still read my work. they're in their, early 20s now, and they've evolved, and they, and I don't know if that comes from reading my work or not, or if I'm an influence in this regard, but they openly admit on social media, like, hey, man, when I was 16, I was fucking wrong about about, transgender people, and I was wrong about this homophobia, and they evolve, and I think it's a beautiful thing to watch, honestly.
And that's how the world's going to change. And these motherfuckers, these social justice warriors who want the world to change, refuse to accept the change, right? When somebody changes their mind and says, I used to think all this, I used to say all this terrible shit. I used to think all this terrible shit, but now I've grown, I've seen. These social justice warriors should be like, applaud that person and bring them in and say, we forgive you, blah blah blah. But they don't. So if the social justice warriors are not letting people change and they're not accepting people's apologies, then what incentive is there to change?
Right. And no, I totally agree with that, because especially, cancel culture drives me nuts.
Yeah.
You see it
childish.
You're on Twitter. Yeah, it's very immature, and it's just very unforgiving, and I don't agree with that. Somebody might have said something, like Joe Biden. Joe Biden's a perfect example. I think he's prejudiced as hell. Still is. Yeah, he may have evolved a little bit from some of the shit he said 40 years ago.
Orangutan to
right, but you have to look at the way he talks down to Latinos, and when he got confronted about
it's
immigration,
that fucking dueño landscaper tone,
Dude, man, you just want to kick that. You want to kick old man in the face.
Yeah.
When he tells the what's his name? I can't remember his name now. When he told him to go vote for somebody else just because he asked him about deportations, I was just like, it's a good thing I'm not supporting you right now, because and
so let's bring it up.
Dude.
Yeah, what was it on Twitter? You said that. What did I disagree with you? I disagreed with something you said. You said,
something about
maybe Biden's not the right person, but you gotta make a choice. Blah blah blah. I said it's on my last episode. A choice between senility and crazy, between senile and crazy. There's no choice between that.
Right,
and they're both for Wall Street, and they're both for fucking keeping the fossil fuel industry going. They're both, Trump might pass Medicare for all. He might, right? He
mentioned that.
He might pass it and run on that and be elected on Medicare for all, while Joe Biden's fighting it. He's not. He doesn't want Medicare for all.
If Donald Trump runs on Medicare for all, he'll win. No, hands down, he's gonna win.
And giving a check to everybody once a month. That president's not getting elected out of office.
Yeah, right. No, he'll win hands down. And if he's smart about it, he would go for Medicare for all, because the vast majority of Americans support that. But what bothers, like what you were saying about between a senile old man and a crazy old man, to me, it's about the people that senile old man is going to surround himself with. Okay, like I don't have a problem with just Trump. I have a problem with
the whole gang.
Miller, dude, yeah. You know what I mean? You look at old pictures of Miller,
slimiest, diabolical, hate themselves, hate life, they don't love anything. Miserable.
Right.
It's miserable.
And to me, it's as much as I hate Biden, I'm going to vote for him, because aside from the commitment I feel to our community, and the way we're being treated, and this with the Trump administration, I feel like, and knowing all the people I know, I'm obligated. I feel obligated to vote for Biden, because man, my Jamaican stepdad, my dad, my Black Colombian stepmom, and all these Mexican families that we've been friends with for 20-some years, who came here, got their shit straight. They got here undocumented, and now everybody's legal. I know a lot of people that are dreamers, and it's too much of a risk for them. If I don't vote or if I vote for Trump, I couldn't justify voting for Trump. That's for sure. But if I
No, I
don't
wouldn't. I
vote,
wouldn't vote for Trump.
I feel like I'm letting them down. I feel like I'm letting them down.
I mean, that's actually a really good endorsement. I wasn't going to vote for Biden, but that's actually, now you have me reconsidering because that's actually a good endorsement for Biden, right? You're saying
Yeah,
they're both going to fuck us, but at least one's going to change the tone of the conversation. He's not going to be talking about how immigrants are this and that, Latinos are this and that, black people are this and that. At least we'll get rid of that. While they're both robbing the country blind, but at least we'll have that. There's no risk of him doing mass deportations or locking people up. Although Obama built those fucking cages, right?
yeah, he did. He did.
Clinton started the wall, right? So it's like
it's tough, but I think in the end, it's the equivalent of being punched in the face with bare knuckles or being punched in the face with a boxing glove. And I think I'll take the boxing glove, And I hate to say that because I really, really cannot stand Joe Biden. But
and I'm almost maybe because I'm still, I'm still too radicalized. I feel myself getting a little calmed down, but I prefer the bare knuckle because, and let me tell you why. Because people will accustom themselves to taking that punch with the glove, man, and they'll just take that hit and take that hit, and I don't want to live in a country that is, with a country full of people who are just taking hits all day, all the time. With a bare knuckle, right?
Yeah.
They're at least going to be like, I hope it gets to a point where, like, they grab the fucking fist. Like, no, stop fucking hitting us.
Right. If we had the power to grab that fist, then yeah. And I guess that's where I have the problem. We don't have the power to fight back like that.
Well, I think one of the good things about the coronavirus is that we're seeing that the federal government is not as strong as we thought it was, right? We thought, the federal government emergency is going to kick in. And really the states, really the cities, especially the big cities, are on their own. Everybody, your neighborhood, you're just on your own, right? And so that's kind of, I feel, empowering.
I feel it. I feel that it's empowering too. Maybe it's because I have a house full of guns, but
you
no,
have a lot of guns, man. I've been thinking about buying a gun, man. I've never shot a gun, but I have my cousin's a cop, my dad was a cop in the Army too, and my brother is a, he was in the Marines, and now he's a CO. He has guns, and so I don't know. It's one of those things. I grew up in a culture. I had a gun pointed in my head when I was in 6th grade, so maybe that kind of fucking put me off guns for a bit. But now I'm thinking like I want that. Yeah, I think it's a right. I mean, I do believe in the Second Amendment. I believe there's limits on the Second Amendment, but I do believe in the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment's there just in case the first one doesn't work out, right?
Right, exactly. And I mean, that's the purpose of it. And I'm a big Second Amendment person, as Trump would say.
Do you believe in like background checks? Do you believe everybody should have automatic assault rifles?
Background
I'm sure you
checks,
do, but do you think people should have them? Those are two different questions, right?
Should have background checks?
Oh no, like a automatic assault rifle.
Automatic assault rifles, man. I'll be honest with you, I don't see why that's an issue, but I mean, I kind of understand why they've been outlawed. When you look back to the Tommy gun and Al Capone and shit like that, I can understand that, and you can still own one. You just have to have a federal firearms license to own, which means you're in a national database, and that's one thing people are against too. A higher level
of qualification.
Mm-hmm. Right. No, yeah. Because I look into getting one just because we go to the shooting range a lot. I take the kids. One of my goals with guns was take them young,
right?
So they understand the power of it,
right?
And you give a an 8-year-old a 22, which doesn't have much kick, but it has a loud enough bang. Yeah, it scares the shit out of them the first time. And then as they get older, we gradually move up to bigger guns. So
what's your favorite gun?
Man, I would have to say a subcompact 380. That's my main weapon that I carry. I used to, when I was working, contractor, I carried two. It's a 380 and I had a 9 millimeter in my boot. It was excessive, but when I got my concealed handgun license, and they were like, "Oh, you carry two guns?" I'm like, "Well, shoot, yeah, I got my license. I'm gonna carry two guns." What the hell not? But I don't do that anymore. But that was when I first got my concealed carry license. And to be honest, I think everybody should have to go through the same little class that I went through to get my concealed carry license. They explain the law to
Hold on, you're
you,
breaking
how
up.
to
They
shoot
they
somebody
they
when you're
explain
not allowed
what?
to shoot
You're
somebody.
breaking up. You explain what?
They they explain the laws to you.
Oh yeah.
Like when you can, yeah, when you're allowed to defend yourself, when you can't. Like in Texas, we have the castle doctrine. So if you're defending your home against an intruder, you have that right. But if you have to warn the intruder first, and if you tell the intruder, hey, I'm pointing a 12 gauge at you, I'm gonna blow your head off, and if he turns around and starts to leave, you can't shoot him.
Right.
A lot of people in Texas do. They'll shoot a motherfucker in the back, and I'm sorry, but you're going to jail for that.
Yeah.
In Texas, you're going to jail for that. And you know, I think everybody should have those classes so that they understand the little nuances of the law and stuff. Plus, the gun safety training is invaluable. There's
Right.
so
No,
many people I know.
if I got a gun, I'd be taking all that shit for sure.
Yeah, no, you want to know, like
Right.
don't go shoot it out in the woods for your first time. Go to a
Right.
gun range,
Right.
have a professional explain it to you because
That's the other reason why I'm considering it, because like I'm okay. That's a responsibility, right? So I'm not gonna just have this gun that
hmm
I haven't shot in 2 years, and maybe it doesn't work. I'm gonna have to be going to the gun range all the time, cleaning it. Blah blah blah.
yeah,
Practicing. I don't want to have this fucking thing like it's a stick of dynamite. Like I'm just gonna fucking light and throw. No, it's a fucking gun. You got to be proficient. You got to know what it is.
yeah. I mean, you got to know how to clean it without blowing your face off. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, a lot of times, people do stupid shit. I think of that moment. I don't know if you saw Tiger King. Oh,
Yeah.
that shit.
This is the second episode in a row Tiger King's come up, man. Tiger King is fucking everywhere, dude.
Yeah. Well,
Well, he's
did
in
you see
Texas,
the part
right?
where the dude shot himself?
Yeah.
Yeah, with that Ruger. Oh, it won't fire if there's no clip in it.
And the
I
guy
was
just
like,
standing like this, like, and
yeah.
like for like
I'm sitting
like
there
a minute,
thinking,
dude.
I'm sitting here thinking, who the hell told you that? That the gun won't fire without a clip in it. If there's one in the chamber, it's gonna go. All
Well,
it needs is that hammer to hit that cylinder, and it's over.
well, he never knew what happened, man. He fucking was blasted, probably, right? And
Yeah,
and so he didn't even know what happened. It was just over.
yeah. Nah, and I think of another issue when my nephew dug out a 22 rifle out from under his bed where his dad was sleeping. My ex brother-in-law and my nephew's out there. He's like 10 at the time. Shot himself right through the foot with a freaking rifle. And I'm like, bro, you got all these guns in your house, the little kids. Lock them up, dude. Lock them up. And when the cops come or whatever, nothing happens. He doesn't get a fine, nothing. And I'm like, well, that's a huge problem with gun culture right now, is that there's a huge lack of accountability and responsibility for not protecting your own kids, man. Like, and kids are shooting themselves. Like in Houston, you hear about it probably a couple times a month, man.
Wow.
Like, yeah, a kid shoots himself, and it's just like, dude, lock up your freaking guns. And I don't know why people are so opposed to having a law that requires you to lock up your guns. And
Some
it's
people just don't like being told what to do, and that's why they
right.
moved to Texas.
Yeah, right. And man, I'll give you that. When it comes to Texas, you have a lot more freedoms here than you do in a lot of other states. Like I homeschooled my kids, and the requirements to homeschool your kids in this state are really lax. Really lax.
Like what?
There's a lot of people that homeschool their kids, and they don't teach them anything but the Bible. And that's because, according to Texas, you have to teach math, reading, science, social studies, and good citizenship. That's it. So a lot of people around here who homeschool their kids, a lot of people come to Texas for that because there's no accountability. You don't have to turn any paperwork into anybody.
Well, how do they
Um,
know you're homeschooling? How do they ever test the kid to see what they know any of that
in,
stuff?
in Texas, they're not allowed to ask about your curriculum. About
Wow.
yeah, because
That's really
and
freedom loving, man.
dude,
Above
I got
everything.
thrown in, I got thrown in court because I took my kids out of school. There's a whole probably a whole nother episode, but for a lot of issues, a lot of them had to do with racism, and so I decided to homeschool my kids when my youngest was in like fifth grade. And as soon as I took my kids out of school, the school district tried to charge me with truancy, threw my ass in court, all this stuff. And this is when I learned about how lax the homeschooling laws are. When the judge tried to ask me about my curriculum, um, I explained to her what the law specifically says. And when she asked me about my curriculum, I handed her a single paragraph letter that says, I'm teaching my kids according to the law in the state. And that's all you're required to give them. And I'm just like, that's a trip. But I didn't, dude. My kids were doing algebra when they should have been doing seventh grade math and shit. Like, my kids are, my 15-year-old's been done with high school for like a year.
Well, that's the good
My
thing about
seven,
homeschooling, right? Because like
yeah,
the
yeah,
public
they move
education,
fast.
the public education system's shit, right? So, and if
Yes,
you're smart enough and you can do it, I mean, you can have your kid way more educated than the average kid.
right. And a lot of people trip because my 15-year-old, like today, we stayed up playing video games late last night, and he didn't get up till like 11 this morning,
Right.
and I'm just like, whatever, whatever. He's done. He and like my mom, why is Dante still sleeping? I'm like, he ain't got shit to do, like
Yeah.
he's done. I'm like, when he gets up, we'll go out to the
And they
yard, do
show
some
like kids are
stuff.
not actually supposed to wake up that early. Kids are supposed to sleep more than
Yeah,
anything.
yeah, that's true. That's true. That's a big deal.
Yeah,
And
and
like,
homeschooling is almost better because like, my stepdaughter, she's 15 and she's in school and they don't give her any work. They don't push her. They don't do anything. And so, I'll try to tell her, you should read this book or you should do. She doesn't want to do anything more than what's required and if she's getting an A, right? She thinks, oh,
right,
I'm doing everything I need to be doing according to school, and I know like, oh, you're not, they're not teaching you. So it's
right,
almost I'm trapped by the public education system.
right. And I felt that way too. And they, it's just the way public education is now. They have a tendency to disenfranchise parents when
Mm,
the education system used to be about parents being a part of the process, about teaching your kids, knowing the curriculum, talking to teachers about where your kids' strengths and weaknesses and things like that. And it's almost like the schools don't allow teachers to be receptive of that anymore. They're so worried about teaching the standardized test, Common Core math, which makes no freaking sense to me.
yeah.
Why they do it
Ooh.
that way? That drives me nuts. I taught my kids math the way we were taught.
Yeah.
It's so much simpler, and everybody learns differently. You can't have a standard
Right.
set of anything because I don't care how my kids figure out the math problem, as long as they get to the end result and the end result is right.
Yeah.
As long as they're
No,
using
and
the
I think
proper
Common Core is the
steps
opposite,
and
right? Isn't Common Core? Isn't
right,
it? It's about the work, how you showing your work.
right.
Is, the answer could be wrong, but you just got to show your work. Like that doesn't make.
Or,
What is that? It's
or
math.
if so, for example, my kids would come home, they're having a problem with math, and I teach them the way we're taught. So at school, they go and they take a math test, and they do the math work the way we teach them, the old school way, and the schools are all about show your work. And I can't even count how many cases where my kids had the answer right, but it was marked wrong because they didn't use the Common Core method to get to the
Wow.
answer.
No, dude,
Right.
that's sabotage, dude.
Stupid.
That's
Right.
fucking
Right.
sabotage.
So that's when I started becoming disenfranchised with school. And then, my 17-year-old, he was always way ahead of everybody else, especially when it comes to like history and stuff. He's a history buff. And I would get calls from the school almost every day because he's telling the teachers are teaching them, say, Texas history or some shit, and
Of course.
they leave out, you know, certain things like, you know, I've heard my kids come home and say that, you know, slaves were voluntary labor, and I'm like, oh hell no, you know. Well, my 17-year-old, he would call the teacher out all the time in class, and teacher's not gonna have that in front of a bunch of students, so I would get calls all the time, and they wanted to put him in in-school suspension for that, and I'm like, was he wrong?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, no, but you know, he shouldn't be questioning authority. And I'm like, well, who are you? Who made
I thought
you
this
an
was
authority?
Texas.
Right? Who made you the authority? Because I'm the parent here, and what I say rules over anything you say or what he has to say, things like that. So, you know, we started having major problems with the schools there, and then, you know, this was in Central Texas, Williamson County. We're talking Klan cops over there got busted for recruiting for the Klan
Damn.
while on duty.
Yeah.
So that's where we were living at the time, and yeah, real racist culture over there. And we started having problems with the principals. And then when we started clapping back at the school and going to school board meetings, then every morning my wife would drop the kids off at school, and on her way back home, as soon as she pulled in the neighborhood, cops were pulling her over, searching our GMC Yukon at the time, for no reason. And it's just because it's a small community, bunch of racist people. You start going and complaining in front of the whole town at the school board and things like that. Cops are there, they know who you are, things, and if they don't like it, they're just going to harass you about it. And we had to deal with that for long until I took my kids out probably a year before I had the stroke. So yeah, my wife was dealing with getting pulled over all the time until we moved away from there. And my oldest son, who's 22 now, he stayed over there in Central Texas, and he was constantly getting pulled over and harassed and getting searched and shit. And he was like, you know what, I'm leaving. And he came and moved to Houston with us just because. And I guess it was my fault, man. I put a big shit stain on our name in Central Texas. So when my son was out there, he was kind of getting the brunt of it. And he has the same name as me, so my mistake.
Damn, that's crazy, man.
Yeah, I mean, we just can't be accepting of stuff like this. You got to stand up, you know, speak up for yourself. And if cops are going to come at you, I guess they're going to come at you anyway. I mean, I don't know what else to say about that. It's just,
Well, there's that. Then there's two ways of thinking like that. You know, I mean, we're like that, right? That's why, you know, it's the first step of being a writer is you got to put your head up, right? It's gonna take some hits. But then two, there's people who say, you know, keep your head down. You know, just try to provide for your family. Don't do anything that, you know, hurts that. You know, if you see some injustice, it's not your fucking business. You know, as long as it's not happening to you. That's half the world, right?
yeah, that's how my stepdad is, you know, because you know he's from Jamaica, but you know, he always says it's hard enough being black in
Right.
this country. So please, like, you know, with my writing and things like that, like he always tries to tell me to, you know, be careful what I say. The last thing he wants is any kind of shit. So, you know, he tries to avoid any kind of drama. He tries to avoid anything possible. And like, we had one of those incidents where one of our neighbors called the cops on him just for being, you know, black, hanging out in the driveway with my nephew. And one of my neighbors called the cops saying that my nephew, who's 6, they said they saw my nephew driving my stepdad's car on this main road with 4 lanes and a median, and the cops came. They started harassing my stepdad in the driveway, and I happened to be here, and I'm just like, bro, what are you talking about? Like, this kid is 6 years old. And my stepdad's like, you know, we haven't left the house. He's like, well, I got this license plate from this car, and they said that kid was driving over here. I looked at the cop like, that kid? Like that little 6-year-old kid over here playing with his Power Wheels Porsche, and you
Barely
know,
driving that.
yeah, like, dude, get the fuck out of here. And like, you know, it's Texas, so he wouldn't come across the property line to get in our driveway. He stayed out by the street. But still, I was just like, you know what, dude, whatever. And I just told my stepdad, I'm gonna just go inside, just walk away. You know, just walk away. And the dude left. And I was just like, I don't know who called him or whatever, but I mean, I just looked at him. I'm like, so some white dude calls you, said a black guy did this, and you just believe it.
Of
Have you
course.
not been paying attention to what's going on? But yeah, of course they do. They believe it. And here we are in. It was a county cop, Harris County, and in Houston, it's one of the most diverse cities in the country. But then when you get out to the county, out just outside the city limits, that's where all that shit and all the racists and stuff. And it's still Texas. You know, it might be a Democratic stronghold here in Houston, and like Austin might be super liberal, but the minute you leave Austin and go into Williamson County or something like that, man, it's Klan country all over the place, and it's you just can't. In some places, you know, like the Green Book, you know, they
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
black people where they can and can't go. We need a new one because it's still that way. It's still that way.
Yeah, I've heard that the people
But
like on the outskirts of Austin, they're super conservative, super racist, and they're actually pissed
yeah,
at what's going on in Austin. They hate the people there and everything.
they do. Yeah, like this. You know that the whole thing is about don't California my Texas right now.
Mm.
Apparently, a bunch of Californians are moving to Austin and
Californians are
stuff
moving
like
everywhere because
that.
it's so fucking expensive and all those wildfires and
Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't. I mean, I wouldn't want to be in California just for the wildfires. You
yeah.
know, but
So how you
yeah,
holding up, man?
there's.
Well, how do you keep insane day to day, man?
You know, honestly, it's been a struggle. I've been out doing a lot of work in my mom's yard, trimming trees and
That's good.
doing what I can with based, with my disabilities and stuff. But I've actually been finding it really hard to focus and write. And I haven't quite pinpointed what it was. I know that some of it is like grief,
Mm.
because there's a few things that set in. I don't know, I guess about the second or third week of this isolation stuff, and it was one of them was like, I wish I really would have hugged my friends, tighter the last time I saw them, or
Camus says
I wish I
that.
would have
Camus
taken the
says
time to
that.
go see my
That's what
dad.
everybody does, man.
Right?
You're not looking forward to
Right?
the future, right? Because you don't know when you can leave, right? When you can get back to normal.
Right?
When you start thinking back, and he says your memories haunt you because you're like, man, that was so fucking fun that one time. We should have done that more, or I should have talked. I should have hung out
Right?
with so and so more. I should have told them something.
Right? And it's like, my dad still lives in Miami. He's 86. Haven't seen him in a few years, and I'm like, damn, I really should have tried to make more of an effort to go see him. But there's a lot because I'm fucking poor. After having a stroke, I still don't have shit. I haven't been able to go back to work, and writing doesn't pay very well. Yeah, I publish on Medium because they have a way to maybe get paid a little bit here and there,
Oh,
but
that's good, man.
that's good. That's good for about $50 a month.
Right.
And props to Julio and everybody at Latino Rebels for giving me a chance because
Yeah, he's
they
really trying to make that
they
viable too, man.
I
He's
can't
been
say no
working
good things.
for years, man. He's been trying to make that viable so that he can, he's
Yeah,
always saying like, I want to be able to pay writers what they deserve and have this, professional staff and that everybody gets what they deserve, man, and take care of everybody. But it's tough, man. It's been, independent Latino media,
dude,
fucking tough,
everybody
man.
everybody over the dude, yeah, dude, that's one of the hardest things. Even I mean, even black folks like in media, they get a little more play, than we do, and
Do you
to
think
be
that's because
argued,
we're divided?
rightfully
Latinos,
so.
like, black people, they're all together. They're all black, right? Like Latinos, it's like, oh, is that a Mexican side, or is
Right,
that a Puerto Rican side, or is that a Cuban side, or is that a Brazilian, or is that, I guess some people don't even consider Brazilians Latinos. I do, but
right.
that goes to my point.
I do, yeah. Right, yeah. There's a lot of that, man. When I was, working a lot of this landscape construction, I hired a lot of, undocumented, workers and stuff, and I helped them get legal and things like that. But when I had a crew of, El Salvadorians over here and Mexicans over there, like you couldn't put them two groups together on the same job site. They will kill each other. And there's, I don't know how else to explain it other than it's their own form of nationalism.
Oh, it's nationalism, and that's why nationalism's so stupid. So stupid.
Yeah, no, it is. It is.
You can be proud of where you
And
come from and how unique it is, but to say like, oh, it's better than everywhere else and fuck everywhere else, that's
or
stupid.
to say, yeah, or to say, Guatemalans are, live like animals or some
Right.
shit like that because you're Mexican, or a lot of people assume Cubans are, automatically racist. So, there's that stereotype that we deal with. So part of the reason I use Arturo the Cuban was not just because it was a name, a little tag given to me, but and and also a little way to rub it in the face of that agent. But want to I want to be
Nice.
able
Coming
to,
full circle. I
right,
like that. Nice.
right, but I want to be able to express to everybody that not all Cubans are that stereotype, and the younger generations and the newer generations, we're less and less like that with every new and incoming generation. So it's just, it's almost like I want to try to change the image of Cubans in America, but instead of being so stereotyped or stereotypical, but I'm about to drop the whole Arturo the Cuban thing and just use my name and just say, fuck it, because you know
But you've
I
evolved past.
just
You've evolved. You're evolving past it. It serves it perfect. It served
yeah
its purpose, right? And then now you're like,
I feel like it kind of holds me back
mm,
now. You know what I mean? Because I'm not using my name. So a place like not that I ever really want to be in the Washington Post or the New York Times, but places like that, they won't accept anything unless you're using your real name. They're not going to publish an article by Arturo the Cuban.
well, it's like how Jay-Z goes. Once he's a billionaire, he becomes Sean Carter again.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, it plays itself out. It's done.
Right.
So
Right.
it served its purpose, and now he can be whoever he wants to be.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel too. I mean, I'm not nowhere near where he's at, but
Right.
um,
All in our
I'm
own way,
starting
man.
to,
All in our own way, man.
right. And you know how it goes. You're a writer, so over time you start to see progress. More fans. You start to, get more readership, more hits, things like that. So you see your career progressively grow, and yeah, it's slow at times.
It's not what you
And
expected it to be. You had a way. You had a vision of
yeah,
that it was you're going to be this by this age, and then you're going to be doing this by this time, and then it doesn't happen, and you're like,
right,
okay, am I fucking up, or is it that I just didn't understand the environment?
right. And I think a lot of it is that, and not understanding the environment itself. Coming from a business perspective, I look at everything as a competitor. Like who's my competitor, who am I competing against? And I try not to treat it like that. I try to learn from other writers that are doing the same thing that we're doing. So it's a bit of an evolution for me to look at other writers as not competition.
Well, you got to make it like
More as,
a respectful competition. Like, yeah, because I'm in competition with you. You're in competition with me, right? As Latino writers,
well,
we're in
yeah,
competition.
right,
But like, you can also that makes us all better, right? You're trying to be better than me. I'm trying to be better than you. But I also have to be able to applaud you. You know what I mean?
exactly. And from a business perspective, you don't typically applaud your competition.
Right.
So at
Right.
least I didn't. I
Right.
didn't. But but yeah, no, it's totally like that. It's a different environment. So for me, it was a little bit of a wake up call and changing the dynamic of how I operate, how I
Right.
think,
Well, it's like with capitalism.
and
People
things
say
like
like capitalism. They say competition's good. Like socialism, there's no competition in socialism. I'm like, no, people are competitive. It's just about
right,
capitalism teaches you to be competitive in a certain way, like death to my fucking competitor. Whereas socialism, there's still
right,
competition, right? How many socialist countries have the best fucking athletes, right? They're competitive, but
right.
they're competitive with themselves. They want their own greatness.
It's like being competitive and supportive.
Right.
That the difference between, I guess, like you're saying, capitalism is being competitive, and the goal is to, annihilate
Crush
the
your
enemy.
enemy. Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah.
socialism is being competitive and supporting the guy you're competing against, with your competition. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know, people are more socialist than they think they are. They just
Yeah.
don't want it. They're afraid to admit it because it's a bad word.
Yeah, but we're changing that, man. And I think the younger generations that stigma will be gone, man. So thanks, man, for coming on. You're the second video podcast,
Dude,
man. This is fun, man. It's always interesting to see. We've been following each other on Facebook. We never talked, man. So it's always cool to fucking meet somebody that What, it's been months now, maybe years that we've been fucking interacting on social media.
Yeah, probably a year or two, I think. But,
Tell people how they can find you and where they can find your work and stuff like that.
Man, finding me is relatively easy. You just look up at Extreme Arturo. That's my username everywhere, social media, like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. But yeah, I don't have my own website yet, but I'm on Medium.
You could always write for Enclave, man. I'll set you up with
Dude,
a fucking thing.
I was gonna send you a message, but I've got some things I'm working on. I'm probably gonna send one or two your way.
We don't pay anything, but as long
you're cool.
The promise I say is that if you do, if you're submitting your best fucking thing and it's interesting, I'll fucking publish you exactly how your words want to come out. That's the whole thing.
Perfect. No, and that's cool. I don't mind supporting your publication and things like that, and not getting paid for it. Right now, and
I'm not getting paid for it. So let me just put that out there. I'm not getting paid for it. So.
I feel you. I feel you. So yeah, but yeah,
I think
man,
it's a good way to we gotta come together so that we're seen more. You know what I mean? Because I think if we're on our own, it's hard for people to find you if you're just lost at sea. Same thing with me. But if we're all together on a raft, we're easier to find, right?
Right. Absolutely. No, and I totally agree with that. And that's part of the whole thing. I try to help promote everybody else's stuff. Like when I posted that we were going to do, when I posted we were going to do this, I tagged you, I tagged Enclave,
I appreciate it, man. I really appreciate it, man. It keeps me going, man. Some, how many weeks you have those weeks where you're like, what the fuck am I doing? Let me just fucking quit this writing shit. It's a fucking pipe dream and grow up, right? But you can't let it go, man. Especially as you get better and you get, it's personal. It's not a fucking career.
A lot of times, man, when I get down like that, where I feel like quitting, I'll go read some of my old work.
Yeah.
Do you amaze yourself sometimes? You read that, you're like, God damn, I wrote that?
I wrote that, and it's like, man, how old was I? And then you're like, oh, right? But then you also see like how you've gotten better. But it's still good. Right. But then you're like, man, I've gotten better since that. And you're like, oh wow, so I can't quit now.
Yeah, I mean, I can remember the topics about what I write about, and in general, all the stuff that I discovered in doing it. But I don't really exactly remember the words that I put down. So when I go back and read it, I'm
just like for the first time, right?
Yeah, right. It's a trip. So.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
But yeah, man.
Well, thanks for coming on, man. Stay safe, stay healthy, and probably have you back on, because we're always interacting. So keep in touch,
absolutely.
man.
Anytime, brother.